Hi everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. Welcome back to this YouTube channel on narcissism and narcissistic relationships. If you're new to the channel, I'd love to have you join us and please hit that subscribe button. So let me ask you a question. How do you let go of one narcissistic family member but keep the rest? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Drop those in the comments. But how do you let go of one and keep the rest? And would love to know if any of you have had any success doing this, because it can feel impossible. It's like, it's like when you have a big mess of cords and like delicate Christmas lights and you're trying to disentangle one thing from a big mass and you end up breaking stuff. It's kind of like that. Someone sent this in as a question and I sort of broadened the focus of it. They were asking, how do you discard family members? And I gotta say, discarding isn't necessary. I'm actually a fan of the slow fade. The problem is that sometimes people want to fade one, but not all family members. So the question is, how do you do that? Discarding is actually what narcissistic folks do to people. However, setting boundaries, distancing, and disengaging is what people who are trying to get out in a healthy manner are trying to do. And that's what we'll sort of break down here. It's not easy to just sort of leave one, right? Because if you distance or go low contact with the family member that you want to get away from, other family members, particularly the sort of enably family members, may take notice and shame and guilt you and wonder why you're not so much in touch anymore. And the narcissistic family member that you're trying to distance from will be really good at playing the victim. Oh, they just won't get in touch with me anymore. I don't know why it is, kind of thing. If you keep at it, the narcissistic family member may also triangulate, gossip about you, and sick flying monkeys on you and kind of make your life within the family system quite miserable and make it even more difficult to maintain ties with those family members that you actually like. Another thing you can try is sometimes doing sort of reconnaissance, figuring out the events or the times when the toxic family member won't be around and use that as an opportunity to see the family members you like. But again, you have to expect some guilt, curiosity, and manipulation around why other family members might think you should be in touch with a toxic family member, maybe how they've changed or whatever their BS and their enabling of the month is. I've got to say, this idea of distancing from one or a selected narcissistic family members and keeping others is one of the greatest paradoxes and challenges for people who have some narcissistic families, but not all of them. And actually, really, the family members they care about, they really care about. You'll see this sometimes where a person will say, my grandparent, I absolutely adored them, but I can't tolerate aunts and uncles. Or I like one of my siblings and I can't stand the other sibling. There are cousins I like, there's cousins I can't stand. And it's really heartbreaking because people will say to be in the presence of the toxic family member actually affects them. It affects their health, it affects their mental state, it affects them in many ways. But the alternative to sort of not have as much contact or access to the family members who are healthy and that you consider beloved people in your life, that trade-off gets tricky. And then there's the additional grief of why is it that other family members can't see this person as toxic? And that idea that you're the one who sees it clearly, they don't. And there may even be a willingness to guilt and shame you for you saying, I'm not particularly comfortable. I don't like this person. I think they're unhealthy. I think they're manipulative. You start using some of the language of narcissism. They're gaslighty. They future fake, whatever language you use. And the family's like, whoa, we're a family. Let's stick together. It's not that bad. They're going to change. They're going through a tough time. We're blood, whatever way they do it. But what it means, though, is anytime you continue to have contact with a toxic family member, it takes a toll on you. I can say clinically over the years, I've seen people approach this in a wide range of ways. In some cases, they would put the money in and sort of find the family member they wanted to be with and sort of do it under the guise of, let's take a vacation together. And then they grab the family member they like or family members they like, go and take a vacation with them separate from everybody else. But still, tongues would be a wagging when they got back. Why are they rushing away? Why aren't they talking? Why aren't you talking to the rest of us? Why did you have to go on vacation without everyone? There's still going to be that standard. So again, triangulation, gossiping. Why aren't you here for the rest of your family? I've also seen it go the other way, where a person has said, like, it's almost like you feel like you're leaving someone behind in a bit of a war zone. I think of one situation in particular where there were multiple siblings, many of whom were toxic, but a really loving, sweet mother. But the toxic siblings had almost sort of created this kind of wall around the mother. And the person I was talking with said, the only way to get to mom is have to deal with the toxic people. And at some point, I had to end up deciding to save myself, and then no longer really had contact with the mother she cared about. And unfortunately, the mother had sort of completely fallen for what the siblings were doing, and many of this person's siblings. Many of this person's siblings still stuck around the hometown where the mom lived, and so they almost felt like to the unguided eye, they looked more attentive, and so that person had to process that grief. Every story is very, very different here. Some people say, you know what, I am going to just sort of bite on a piece of wood and show up at my cousin's wedding because I adore my cousin, even if it means I have to see all of these other toxic people. Some people will have an escape plan. They'll say, you know what, once I get to a certain point in this wedding, I'm out because I won't be able to tolerate these people. So only you know what's going to work. Some people might say, you know what, I'm only going to show up to holidays like Thanksgiving every other year. I'm going to take a pass on family reunions. So there's different ways people will do this. But if you live close to your family and they feel they're sort of more of an embedded part of your life, picking and choosing can get really, really tricky. One of the key pieces, though, is to not get too lost in trying to school your family, saying, hey, the reason I am distancing from my sister is because my sister is toxic. That's usually not going to play well. I don't know that you owe anyone an explanation. You can often come up with have dozens of white lies. I've been busy, I've been this, I've been that. But at some level, the conflict that your sibling might have gotten some power or gotten emboldened by, when that gets pulled away, you can be sure that your sibling is still going to keep trying to encroach themselves into your life. By and large, most people, despite the grief involved, will say that once I distanced from the toxic family member, I felt so much better. There would be grief, the grief of, oh, I really don't have a family to fall back on. There will be the grief of, wow, this is the mother I have, or this is the father I have, or these are the siblings or cousins or extended family or whatever I have. There's a lot of grief. People hate, there can even be shame. This is the family I come from. Or people don't want to tell other people why they're not in touch with their family. So there's a complex cascade of reactions when you make that decision to distance from family members. That said, most people will say once they got over that hump of grief and shame and were coasting beyond that, that they felt so much better being out of the situation and recognizing, like, wow, for the first time, the holiday season doesn't have my stomach in a knot. That it is so refreshing to not think I have to continually text with this person and have these toxic back and forths. It is very challenging, though, to be able to maintain the pick and choose a la carte approach to family and saying, I'm going to have contact with this one and this one. Every so often there can be a surprise. There may be truth tellers in your family or people who say, I see what they're about, and I'm absolutely willing to stay close with you. You matter to me. We don't need to tell anyone what we're doing, but that's pretty rare. The sort of tentacles of a toxic person in a family system can go pretty deep and wide. And so in most cases, you don't get to do that sort of pick and choose. You often do lose a lot of people at once. And many people might sort of view you as being uppity or arrogant for saying, oh, I don't want to spend time with the family. I go, who do you think you are? That you get to make that decision. Coming from a narcissistic family system, again, is a long-term grief. These are relationships that often affected you in a way that they impacted your adult life. Underestimating your own abilities, not always making the best partner choices in adulthood. These relationships sort of hem us in mentally. And then the grief again is that you're like, wow, this is not getting better even as we're older. And when I see it, it breaks my heart to think like, wow, you once believed in these people and you have to give that up. But I have to say, in many a narcissistic family system, unfortunately, more often than not, the a la carte approach, the picking the ones you want to stay in touch with and then cutting out the other toxic folks, it's pretty challenging in most families unless you got some other truth tellers in the midst there who actually see it clearly. But in that case, then they've probably distanced too. So again, would love to hear your experiences. It's different for everyone. To the person who sent in this idea, I hope your experience of distancing from family members is going as smoothly as it can. Thanks again.